Hi everybody, welcome to the live stream today. My name's Lauren. We are going to be demonstrating how to plant plants in pots because I get asked about this every single day that I'm here, which I'm really happy to get to show you guys my little techniques for what I think is an adequate planting. So I have two different pieces put together here for you today. We were going to do one large specimen just so you can see all the details up close of what's going on here, and we're going to do a little assortment and arrangement of some shade plants. So my big piece that I've chosen is one of my favorite shrubs I'm pretty passionate about. This is called a butylon or flowering maple. It's an evergreen maple variety with really interesting dinner bell shaped flowers. This one's got a variegation on the leaf. It's really stunning. Flowers kind of sporadically throughout the year, attracts hummingbirds. They're pretty versatile as far as sun or shade, and maybe less water than you might think, which is nice. However, we're talking about potted plantings today. Watering, drought tolerance when it comes to potted plantings is kind of out the window. Pots generally need to be kept moist consistently, regardless of the drought tolerance of your plant. So let's go ahead and get started. We'll get right into it. The most important part about planting a plant in a pot or a planter is that it must have a drainage hole. If you don't have at least a drainage hole the size of your thumb or several the size of a pinky finger, you need to get handy with a drill or find a new pot, because it's not going to be a happy result for you in the long run. Get asked a lot of questions about drainage and rocks in the bottom of a pot. I personally don't think that it's helpful from what I have learned in horticulture school. You want potting soil, one consistent homogeneous mixture all the way through the pot. So we're just going to go ahead and get right in there. I'm going to fill this thing up. You know, I'm going to take the plant out of the pot first so I can use my pot as a tool. I'm grabbing the base, the crown of the plant, trying to be gentle but firm. Just give the pot a few taps and it should fall right off. I'm going to set him down, use my pot. So we want to start by putting a base layer of soil in that's going to make sure that this plant reaches the top of your pot to the same level that it was in its plastic pot, which means the crown of the plant here needs to set exactly at the top of your soil level, not buried, not exposed. So you want it about there, which means, I don't know if you could get a shot inside, I still need a few more inches of soil. So just keep on adding until you get to about a little higher than the depth of your root ball here, because then you need to compress the soil. If you don't firm the soil well enough, you'll have loose soil, and as you water and over time, things will settle and shift, and your plant may become askew, or the root ball could become exposed. So you want to give it a nice firm. I'm just pressing down gently with my weight. You don't need to get gorilla thumbs over here, you know. Just firmly enough that when you push on it, you know, there's some resistance there, and that's good enough. This plant has really healthy roots. It's nice and fresh and white, not too much binding. But if you did come across a plant that has a lot of bound up roots, you kind of just gently tease them like this apart. This stimulates new root growth. But this one doesn't need it too much. It's pretty happy. Just give it a little gentle rub. If your roots are brown and hard and bound, you can take a pair of pruners and kind of cut them apart and get at it a little more aggressively. I'm just going to center him in the pot. I'm still a little bit low. Let's put a little more soil in there. So quite a large amount of soil is going in before the plant ever makes it into the pot. Okay, that's pretty good. I like that. See, that sits about exactly the level of the top of the pot. And I think that's pretty good. So now you're just going to take more soil. Oh, you know what? I forgot something very important already. You want to add some fertilizer with your potting soil. It's just going to give everything a jump start and get the fertilizer down to the level of the roots. I had a bag. Jonathan, do you see a little bag of fertilizer?
I'm sorry, I don't see a bag of fertilizer.
That's all right. We can just pretend. We would take, for this plant, you know, I use my hands because I'm kind of a bear about it. Just a few handfuls of this stuff, and you'd mix it down into the soil as you're packing. Or you can just spread it around the surface after you've finished your planting. Is there a question?
Question, so you're using an all-purpose fertilizer?
Yes.
Would you recommend multiple applications, and if so, after how long?
Absolutely. So fertilizing in a pot is really important because it's the only way that plants are getting nutrition is what you're putting into it. So generally I would say you can fertilize with something gentle like this. These are single digits. It's really pretty mild and organic. You can use that every 2 to 3 months. And I just brought an all-purpose fertilizer. For this specific plant, the maple, they probably would appreciate an acid 2 or 3 times a year. But you can alternate between an acid fertilizer, an all-purpose fertilizer. You can even use a flowering food on these. But that's kind of a whole other subject. I think Sarah covered a video about fertilizers a couple weeks back, and that should be in our archives you guys can look into if you have more questions about that. I'm just gonna try to speed this along, get the soil in there. This particular plant is staked because it is a little bit on the brittle side or fragile side for transportation. So I'm going to remove these stakes when I'm all done here. So again, you're adding soil around, all the way around the diameter of the root ball, and then you're firming as you go. Pressing down really nice and firm because this is where it counts. And then you can kind of sweep everything aside. You want to make sure your crown is exposed at the same level as its original soil. You don't want it buried. That could be a bad thing for your little plant here. We're almost done with it. Just going to give it a little more. Even it up. I think he probably made it into the pot not totally centered, but you know, you can give this thing a rotation according to how it's oriented to the sun. It will lean a little towards the sun over a matter of several months. So since, I don't know if you guys can see how very crooked this came out, but basically you'd want to put the full side on the north side and the side that's maybe slightly wonky facing south to the sun so it can compensate by growing in that direction. I also brought some stone mulch here just to give it a nice clean finish. So this is one you could also apply fertilizer, by the way, right to the top of the soil. Want to make sure not to damage these cute little shoots down there low. They're pretty tender. Just enough to cover the surface of the soil, maybe an inch or so. Get rid of that stake. Get rid of this stake. Alright, so that looks pretty good. Last but definitely not least, you're going to want to give it some water. So an adequate watering for any potted planting is going to be watered to the point where water comes out the drainage hole in the bottom. Make sure we don't get the fertilizer wet. Maybe stop for a second, let that percolate and see how that goes. Probably needs some more. We'll give that a couple minutes, let that soak in and see if we got a drip out the bottom. Can always add a little more in a moment. So I think he looks pretty good. Moving on to just another example of how to plant several things together. We've got a couple different sizes of plants here. So, you know, just a little demonstration of how to make sure everyone gets firmed in properly so we don't get a lot of settling. I don't know if I can move this, but he's a little on my leg. It's okay. We'll just get right in and put our base layer of soil into that pot. Again, this pot has a nice big drainage hole in the bottom. It's already got some dirt in there. Sharp tools would maybe come in very handy, but instead we use our hands. So let's just firm that up and see kind of where we sit. Definitely going to need plenty more soil in there. So the plants I've selected here today are primarily for shade or partial sun. I like natural looking gardens, so I've chosen things that are intentionally a little bit monochromatic. Just a nice play on textures and some rich foliage colors. It's like a little escape. You're creating a fantasy destination. It's like I think this looks like a really lush woodland. So it's like a nice little vacation for your eyes and your fingers. That's what makes potted planting so wonderful. So it doesn't matter where you are, you can create something that otherwise you probably would not have been able to enjoy. So again, you're just going to kind of gently grasp the crown of the plant. This is a fern, so you want to grab the whole thing so as not to, you know, put too much stress on any one frond. Just give it a little tap like that. We want to just, again, gently just kind of stimulate the root growth by breaking that root ball apart. That's a pretty good level for this larger guy. So now I'm going to go ahead and add a little more soil just to raise up the level around him so we can get some smaller plants to fill in. This is just a regular potting soil I'm using, by the way. Like I said, all these plants are partial sun or shade plants. They don't need anything specifically rich or well draining. However, I do like to use a well draining soil on most of my plantings at home, including succulents, shrubs, bonsai trees, vegetables and herbs. I like the cactus soil mixed with a little bit of everything because I like to water maybe more often than I should. Helps things drain through so they don't stay too wet between your waterings. It's a nice carex. I just love the texture and that bright color. I want to put him on the edge so he can spill over. So I want to make sure I get a handful of soil between this root ball and the surface edge of the pot right there. I'm just going to tuck it and shove it right up into the edge there. And that's just fine. I'm going to take one of my coral bells, this heuchera plant. Just a nice green foliage. It gets a small red flower. But I'm here mostly for texture is why I want him around. I'm going to stick him right in between these two. So he's stuffed right between the two, no problem at all. They will grow together just fine. Around the back of this fern, I've got a small space. I'm gonna tuck, I think a moss. I like the bright green of this moss back here. So this guy, I just squeezed the bottom of the pot, set my hand on top, and I flipped it upside down So you're not grabbing, you're not, these very delicate little foliage. Just let the whole weight of it rest on you like a, I don't know. So he's just kind of tucked right in there, right up to the fern base. Let's go ahead and get a little more soil around each of these. So we're just raising the level, and then we'll scooch some against and aside so we have room to put another plant right there. I'm gonna do another Carex. Also, I personally like to see simple mass plantings instead of doing a one of these, two of those, one of this, one of that. I like to see them massed together. It looks more mature, more grown in. And then I'm gonna just stuff the rest of my hooper in to fill the rest of it up. So this is really just a demo on how to get them all in there and make sure that they rest comfortably together. So this is as full as I want that. I'm just going to use soil to fill up the rest of that space. I will be giving another live stream in a few weeks, kind of a second part to this about plant selection and how you would choose the plants for whichever area you're planting, for pots again. So that would be if you want to do edibles, or if you have a very hot sunny place, or maybe somewhere that gets no sun at all. So we can talk through exactly what goes together and why and where. This is really just more of a how to get it all in there. You can see everything gets a nice layer of soil kind of coating it, and that's why we'll give it a little bath when it's all done here. Let's do another moss. Gosh, I made such a mess. I usually love to clean as I go. I'm neat freak like that. So again, I'm going to take what soil's here and press it up into the edge of that last moss so they both have some new substrate to grow into, but close enough so that they look like they're already one continuous growth. All right. And then I think that leaves us space for one more heuchera, or what do you think, a moss, Jonathan, maybe?
I think I love the color of the moss.
Yeah, I do too. Thanks. So we've got quite a pocket. This will happen. So you can see if you want to get down in there, there's several fist space of emptiness. So we need to add some more soil before we put that moss in here, because what's going to happen is you'll leave a space this wide underneath it of just air, and that will make a divot, a low spot. So go ahead and get a pretty good handful of soil in there. It looks full, but it's nice and fluffy, and that's fine. So you just get in there and press it apart, and then you can stick the moss in there.
So Lauren, Mary Vincent wants you to know, wow, you make it look so easy.
Well, thanks, Mary.
And so the question would be, would you encourage people to just come and shop for different textures? Suzanne was saying filler, spiller, and thriller.
Yes, absolutely. So like I said, that's going to be gone into a little more detail in part 2, choices. I can't remember what we titled it. I think it's selecting the plants for your pots, design ideas or something like that. But yeah, filler, thriller, and spiller. You got it. So very nice, very pretty. I'll give it a little water. And I don't think there's a lot of room for a stone mulch in this one, but if you wanted to, this would make a really fun fairy garden piece. You could put some little miniatures or seashells, or, you know, make a bench out of twigs when you have nothing to do. Stuck inside the house, done with Netflix. And then we'll check up on the water on this on one more time. Just give everything a nice rinse. Nice happy little rainstorm in there. I think that looks pretty nice. It's a little chaotic, but that's what a great garden should be. It's beautiful chaos. Okay. So you can always come back several times to see if your water has drained out the bottom. It might take a few minutes for them to soak everything in. But really, really, I mean, if you're in a terrible rush, you can go ahead and bombard it with water. It's not going to murder the thing. Any other questions? All right, well, thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate it, guys. I had a lot of fun here. Be sure to check in tomorrow morning at 9. Sarah Smith is going to be doing a seminar on edibles. This should be great. So thank you very much. Have a good night.